Hello and welcome back to the channel. After the visit to Porto, we return to the interior of Portugal, to Amarante, on the banks of the river Támega, and known as San Gonzalo, the Portuguese Valentine. Then we head to Lamego and its sanctuary, which offers us an incredible panorama of this city surrounded by vineyards. And if you like our video, do not forget to like it, subscribe and activate notifications so that you know when we upload a new video. Amarante on the banks of the river Támega, it is a cool city that remains in an unfair background with respect to other cities in northern Portugal, and that you should definitely visit. As for parking, you have several free parking options, very close to the historic centre, and if you go like us in the motorhome, a good option will be the parking of the municipal pool. We begin our visit to Amarante on the banks of the river Támega, which gives us a very photogenic image of the city and the two symbols of it, the bridge of San Gonzalo and the monastery. And it is precisely Saint Gonzalo who gives historical relevance to the city, as he settled there after his pilgrimage to Rome and Jerusalem. We cross the river Támega by the bridge of San Gonzalo, the symbol of the city, a medieval bridge, which in addition to its artistic value, also has historical value, as here the inhabitants of Amarante in the year 1809 resisted the attack of the French troops of Napoleon. After crossing the bridge and entering the historic centre by a narrow street, we arrive at a beautiful garden where the town hall and the municipal museum Amadeu de Sousa Cardoso, a modernist museum and dedicated to the work of the Portuguese artist born in Amarante. The museum is located in one of the cloisters of the Monastery of San Gonzalo, and for a price of €4, you can access a sample of portraits, sketches, vignettes, and some of the paintings of the signature of this peculiar artist. From here we return to the bridge, and we enter the historic centre, in which the church and monastery of San Gonzalo stands out, whose works will be completed in 1620 with a blend of Renaissance, Manierist and Baroque styles, and surprising the monumental facade, which reminds of Italian Renaissance buildings. Inside the church, you can admire its magnificent Baroque altar, as well as visit the sacristy or the cloisters. You can also visit the tomb of San Gonzalo, known as the Portuguese Valentine, and which the inhabitants of Amarante pay tribute to every 10th of January. You will notice that the sculpture of San Gonzalo is a bit worn out, and this is due to the fact that according to tradition, the faithful of this saint embrace his figure asking for favors of love and fertility. Once our visit to such a unique place is over, we head through a steep street to the historic centre, where we are gaining meters and getting a better panorama. We arrive at the Church of San Pedro, a beautiful church built in the 18th century in Baroque style. From here, as is our custom, we get lost in the streets of Amarante, where we can find places as curious as this old house, where you can both donate and collect free clothes. On our way back, we find the old convent of Santa Clara, today occupied by the municipal library, and where you can see the remains of the old facade. Next to it we find a balcony, in which it stands out as emerging from the bell tower of the Monastery of San Gonzalo, and from which we will enjoy a beautiful panorama, both of Amarante and the cloisters of the monastery. Following the descent, we find the small church of Santo Domingo, built in the 18th century in Baroque style, and which houses the Museum of Sacred Art. Before finishing our visit to Amarante, we headed to the other side of the river to visit one of the many pastry shops by which Amarante is famous, in which it sells a typical sweet, known with various names and forms of penis, and that linked according to the tradition to San Gonzalo. Men give gifts to their lovers, a tradition not very subtle, and which is linked both to the power of the saint to find a mate within the scope of the Catholic Church, as well as to pagan rites linked to fertility. And with this curious tradition, we left Amarante and headed to Lamego. Lamego, which has about 25,000 inhabitants, is situated among the hills covered with vineyards of the Alto Douro region, being a place of peregrination and crossing of roads towards Santiago de Compostela. As for parking, you have no problem, as you have a large and free parking located next to the multipurpose center of Lamego. After our trip to Braga and the visit to the sanctuary of Buen Jesus del Monte, we meet with Lamego and the sanctuary of Our Lady of the Remedies, located at the top of Mount San Esteban. The staircase to the sanctuary, of more than 600 steps, is decorated with impressive tiles, and between section and section springs, sculptures and even a small chapel, makes it worth the effort of the ascent, being able to rest in a small forest with caves and lakes. Before arriving at the sanctuary, we find the Court of Kings, whose protagonist is the Fountain of the Giants, with a large 15-meter obelisk, and around it the stone sculptures of the ancient 18 kings of Israel. And so we came to the sanctuary, built in the same place where in the 14th century there was a small chapel. Both the sanctuary and the beautiful staircase were built in the 18th century, and were thought to be finished in 1905, and inside you will find an image of Our Lady of the Remedies, carved in wood in the 14th century where she appears breastfeeding the child Jesus. As you have seen, in the interior a mass was being celebrated, and we decided to explore the exterior of the sanctuary, enjoying a pleasant walk, in which we encounter a chestnut with almost 800 years of age, which is classified as a tree of public interest. After the visit to the sanctuary, which can also be climbed by vehicle, we head to the historic town of Lamego, presided over by a long avenue, at one of whose ends, we find a statue in tribute to the Portuguese fighters fallen during the First World War. Returning to the square, we find the cathedral, built in the 12th century, as a witness to the tower in Romanesque style, and where later elements of other styles were added, such as late Gothic or Renaissance, and highlighting in the interior the 16th century Gothic cloister. We begin the ascent towards the castle, and we enter the historic center by the so-called Gate of the Sun, one of the two gates of the wall of Lamego, which gives access to the castle's neighborhood. We walk through the medieval route of the castle neighborhood, formed by narrow paved streets, which lead us to the highest point of the citadel, where is the castle of Lamego, which began to be built in the 12th century with the aim of defending the village from possible invasions. Currently, of the original construction only one square tower and the wall is preserved, although it is worth climbing only by the panoramic, before leaving the citadel and Lamego. by the so-called Porta dos Figos, on the top of which we find an old oratory, currently restored and painted in red, although the original dates back to the 8th century.